All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into what is honestly a thrilling 6-year race to cure artificial intelligence of its fatal flaws. And we aren't talking about software patches here. We're talking about doing something completely radical, fundamentally rebuilding computer architecture from the ground up. We are literally stepping away from the probabilistic guesswork that runs our current internet and descending straight to the bare metal.
So, here's our roadmap for today's journey. We'll kick things off with the 2020 ideation, then unpack the crisis of vanishing point probabilities, dive deep into the math of non-halting systems, push beyond the polar wall, break down the final LNS blueprint, and finally we'll wrap up with what this means for your infrastructural choice.
Okay, let's jump right into Part 1, the 2020 ideation. We're tracking lead strategist Kyle McLean-Smith's intense journey, starting way back in June of 2020. What basically started as a casually misunderstood email threat during a MyTax research proposal rapidly snowballed. We see this massive evolution from theoretical software concepts trying to bridge human intent and machine execution to diagnosing critical hardware failures in 2024, moving into entirely new mathematical frameworks and ultimately arriving at unyielding physical hardware realities by late 2026.
You know, the sheer irony of this specific historical artifact is just incredible. During that early MyTax ideation phase, Smith was explicitly told by a colleague to ignore the details and just focus on high-level deliverables. But here's the thing, those exact, microscopic, obsessive details are ultimately what sparked this entire architectural revolution.
Instead of backing down, Smith fired back. He insisted that his focus was entirely on how the exact code and the runtime tree reflect each other, which allows developers to seamlessly jump between expressions. This absolute obsession with exact structural mapping laid the foundational roots for what would become LIFO, last in, first out, state trees. Think of these LIFO trees like ruthless bouncers at a club. They completely reject conflicting inputs to maintain perfect, deterministic elegance.
Which brings us to the core problem in Section 2, vanishing point probabilities.
So why do we even need this deterministic elegance in the first place? Well, because current AI basically operates like a giant wood chipper. When machines use degraded approximations to do arithmetic, it triggers associative bleed. Concepts just mush together. Because of vanishing point probabilities, as an AI trains on data produced by another AI, those microscopic errors don't just stay flat, they compound infinitely. Genuine facts get completely destroyed, inevitably leading to total semantic collapse. It's what's known as a dead internet spiral.
To really grasp the root cause here, we have to aggressively contrast these two hardware paradigms. On one side, we have the chaotic FPU gambler. The floating point unit relies on lossy guessing, which permanently wipes out the exact chain of title of our data and, frankly, destroys any legal accountability. But on the other side, we have the sharp, rhythmic ALU surveyor. The arithmetic logic unit is a relentless, perfect metronome of clocked voltage. 1 + 1 is exactly 2, every single time. It executes pure binary truth, restoring verifiable digital trust right down at the silicon level.
So how do we fix this mathematically? Let's look at Section 3, the math of non-halting systems.
To fix this catastrophic wood chipper effect and escape the FPU gambler, the foundational journal Hakiate Universali proposed a massive mathematical intervention. We essentially have to abandon the flawed geocentric apples model, where numbers are treated as discrete, insulated objects that constantly require irrational, messy corrections. Instead, we shift to a light model. It's like a Copernican revolution for number theory, viewing numbers as continuous flow, a perpetual wave-particle system of geometric elegance. And that brings us to the actual math of it all. By using the specific base calculus you see here, the messy, crash-prone probability of traditional event-driven programming is totally transformed into continuous digital flow. Actually, it essentially resolves the Turing halting paradox. Instead of crashing into an infinite vanishing point, it uses a finite area end approach. This is a real game changer because it allows massive systems to run perpetually without causing a fatal stack overflow.
Moving right along into 2026, we hit Section 4, beyond the polar wall.
As we hit April 2026, all those abstract math theories finally crossed over into hyper-specific physical execution. And replacing unpredictable, guessing software with an audit-ready deterministic pipeline, yeah, that's no small feat. It requires a seriously intense, strict sequential process to map pure fluid dynamics into highly structured topological engineering. It all starts down at quantum state initialization, pushes through strict stabilization phases, and finally achieves controlled expansion within a rigid 64-bit substrate.
This physical mapping was formalized in the seminal paper Beyond the Polar Wall, released by the Authorship Universale Research Collective. With wild advancements like global remainder tracking and pseudo-normalization, this breakthrough guarantees, and I mean guarantees, that every single data point gets an exact, permanent, and forensically verifiable home. There is absolutely no guessing allowed here.
Which brings us to the climax of our timeline. Section 5, the final LNS blueprint. This right here is where all those theories are finally forged into metal. The solid scaling law proves that the new Pell-Smith substrate achieves a peak efficiency of 1.07 bits of precision per bit of hardware residency. To put that into perspective, it physically outperforms the standard logarithmic limits of traditional hardware. It proves that absolute deterministic execution isn't just infinitely safer, it's remarkably more efficient.
And this efficiency scales up beautifully into the law of 768. Incredibly complex, 256-dimensional AI concept vectors are perfectly collapsed into a tiny bit-resonant payload. Because the hardware physically mirrors the math, this architecture drops the metabolic processing load across the Google bus by over 90%. 90%!
The absolute beating heart of this LNS manifold is the golden 24 hubs. By adopting this sovereign alphabet of 24 rational hubs, we support infinite combinatorial semantic capacity. We are completely terminating the associative drift and that calculator gunk of legacy floating point systems. It literally liquidates 400 years of mathematical debt, creating a native, bit-perfect coordinate system for all digital knowledge. And the best part? No messy translation software required.
Finally, let's look at Section 6, your infrastructural choice. So we've traced this incredible journey from a single MyText chat log all the way to a deterministic hardware solution. But what does this massive architectural shift mean for you? Well, you are left facing a critical fork in the road. On one hand, you have the cloud enclosure, where you remain a passive digital tenant, just quietly renting your cognitive capabilities from centralized monopolies built on probabilistic noise. On the other hand, you have true digital sovereignty, where you secure your own local deterministic hardware, rely on absolute forensic truth, and guarantee that your true human authorship isn't just tossed into a digital wood chipper.
The tools for absolute, locally verifiable truth now exist in the metal itself. So the ultimate question is, who will you allow to control the physics of your digital reality as we step into tomorrow? Will you succumb to the cloud enclosure, or will you step up and ride as the sovereign pilot of your own machine? Think about that. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. And remember to keep questioning the architecture around you.